Well, it is my great honor to introduce Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. Governor Patrick is a political hero to all of us in this room. He has political courage, he has consistency, he has an unrelenting quest for liberty for all Texans. From defending Texas oil and gas from the pernicious Wall Street ESG mandates, to shepherding a historic $18 billion property tax relief, Dan has led the way. And he's been on the forefront of the fight against wokeness since the very beginning, helping to get rid of the critical race theory in our public schools, and of course, near and dear to my heart, to eliminate DEI practices in our universities. And lastly, let me just point this out. A few years ago, there was a group of lefty journalists who wrote an attention-seeking revisionist book, and now this is the real title of the book: Forget the Alamo, The Rise and Fall of an American Myth. Well, yes, and it was as atrocious as it sounded. Well, Dan jumped right in there, and he defended the state's heritage with an inspiring op-ed about the true battle of the Alamo. And he sent a message very loud and clear: don't mess with Texas, and don't ever mess with our Alamo. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome one of the greatest lieutenant governors in the history of the state of Texas, Dan Patrick.
The show started. Let's get going. Thank you, Brenda. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you
so much. Thank you.
Thank you. As long as you're standing when I leave is the good thing. So that's the main thing. I always look forward to this every session because all of you in this room are the lifeblood of what we do. We could not, as fellow conservatives, and I have the most conservative Senate we've ever had, you're the lifeblood of what gives us the wind beneath our wings to go and fight, because it's not always easy. You know, it shouldn't be hard in a red state. It shouldn't be hard. We have the majority in the Senate, the majority in the House. We have all the statewide. It shouldn't be hard to pass every conservative bill you could possibly dream of. And I'm hopeful that this is a session with a new speaker in place that happens. I was thinking today, we've only been here 24 days. The Senate's already off to a great start. We've passed school choice. We've passed a bill to increase the homestead exemption to $140,000. We passed 4 bail bond reform bills today in the Senate and yesterday. And we're going to pass pretty much every conservative bill you could think of. And it just depends on the House to get it done. And I'm hopeful that happens. One of the things we have to do this session is think big. Why think big? Because Joe Biden's not in the White House anymore to stop us from thinking big. Can you imagine if Kamala Harris had won? We all knew in advance how bad it would be. But what Elon Musk and Doge has already turned over in only 30 days, this is the 30th day, it shows you the rot that was in our federal government, the way they spent your money, the way they undermined every value we have. They weren't just out to pass some liberal policies. They were out to destroy this country. Just every day when you look at how they were spending your tax dollars. You know how I always think of tax dollars? I think of your individual tax dollars. For example, they spent $20 million in Iraq on Sesame Street of your money. Now, the average taxpayer, and some of you do better than others in this room, and I'm glad, that's why you're supporters, but the average taxpayer sends about $10,000 a year to the federal government on their IRS taxes. You know, if you take the average salary and a family of 4 and the deductions, about $10,000. So they say, oh, it's just $20 million. Well, how many $10,000 taxpayers is that to get to $20 million? Quite a few. So if you went to a taxpayer and said, by the way, thank you for really working hard this past year, and we know you're struggling to put food on the table and take care of your family and save for college. Thank you for your 10 grand because we're going to send it over to Iraq so that they can make Sesame Street a little bit better, or actually a little bit more woke. You would say, don't do that with my money. So when I look at our Texas budget, we do the same thing. Senator Joan Huffman, who's our finance chair, and all the people on finance, we look at the same thing. We don't say, well, it's just $2 million. How many taxpayers, 100% of what they pay into the state, does it take for that $2 million? So what they have done on DOGE and what they're going to continue to do is going to just flip this country upside down for the good. And that's why the Democrats hate what's happening. We're destroying all their dream bills. We're destroying all their dream policies. I don't know Elon very well. We met at the inauguration, but last week we had a call. And I said to Elon, Elon, how have you found all this money this fast? He said, well, we've onboarded, which means they've had access to the computer systems. He said, it was just all there wide open. They didn't try to hide anything. They were proud of what they were funding all around the world in this country on USAID and other programs. He's just there. They never thought anyone would look. You have to understand, folks, that they were so bold and brazen the last 4 years because they thought they were invincible. They thought President Trump was done. I said to the president, we were at the White House a few weeks ago, and I said to the president, I know you're not going to like to hear this because I know you would have preferred to have back-to-back terms because they wouldn't have put you through all those phony baloney trials. I said, but Mr. President, here's the truth. They thought you were finished. They thought you were done. And they didn't think there was anyone else in the Republican Party who could stop them in another 4 years. So they came out of the woodwork with every leftist socialist program you could think of because they thought they were invincible. So the good news is, Mr. President, they've been exposed to the American people, and the American people didn't like what they saw. And you're the only person, and I believe this in my heart, you're the only person, and we've got great Republicans in Texas and all around the country, you're the only person that will come here and stand up to them and take this country back the way our founders envisioned. So I think it's a blessing, Mr. President. It wasn't your timing, it was God's timing. Because God still has his eye on this country. You know, 2 Chronicles 7:14, we've all heard it. If my people who are called by my name will get down and kneel and pray and turn their face to me and ask forgiveness for their wicked ways and to heal their nation, I will hear them from heaven and I will forgive them and I will heal their land. And I used to think when it said, if my people, that was Americans. No, my people are the Christians in America. If my people, and I think we saw in this past presidential election, a lot of people, whether they were believers or not, but I think Christians finally came out of the church and said, enough's enough. Enough's enough. We had Riley Gaines on the Senate floor today to recognize her for her courage. And I remember that back in 2017, Lois Colcourse and I passed the bathroom bill, and we got a lot of grief from some moderate Republicans in the state. Oh, we don't want to go down that road. I said, what do you mean down that road? You want men and women's bathrooms? You want boys playing girls' sports? So here we are 8 years later, and we passed that, of course, in the Senate last session. It took a few sessions to get it through the House, but we got it through. That's why a new speaker is good. And it took years for the federal government to do it. And then President Trump had an executive order. And I talked to Riley Gaines afterwards, and I said, Riley, last weekend, I was with my 8-year-old granddaughter. Jan and I have 8 grandkids. And she was playing basketball. It's a church league. And before they start the game, you know, the referees do a prayer. And I saw all these little girls sitting there, and I thought, what if a boy was in that mix? It just would undermine what not only that church league is doing, but even if they weren't in a church league, it would undermine these girls. How would an 8-year-old girl kind of think about that? Well, there's a boy over here playing. And what it really brought home was, and you have to understand this, and this was what Riley Gaines understood. This was not about playing sports. It was not. The left didn't care about who won the swim meet, if it was a boy or a girl. It was about disrupting the family unit. That's what it was about. It was overturning our principles and our values and our morals. That's what it was about. And so God's timing, because God's people stood up in this past presidential election and took this country back, is the reason that America can think big. I bet, I want you to raise your hand when I ask this question. How many of you, every day you can't wait when you wake up to see what Donald Trump is going to do that day, right? Every day. What's going to happen today? So if America is now on the precipice of thinking big, it's time that Texas thinks big. We think big on everything we do. And we always have, because we are Texas, but this is our opportunity. We can't be laggards. I can't let some moderates over in the Texas House who have an R in front of their name slow us down from doing things that you want to do and I want to do. And I have faith in our new speaker that he'll turn them around. We have some good House members here. We have great senators here. We are a Christ-centered Senate. I want you to know that. We are a Christ-centered Senate. I know we have 4 senators here. Stand up. Senator Birdwell, Senator Paxton, Senator Perry, Senator Sparks. Where are you? These 4 people represent 20 Republicans who put Christ first in all they do. I gave a short prayer at the prayer breakfast 2 days ago. And I said, if you put Jesus first, you can't help but do the best for the people. If you listen to a lobbyist, the last one you better talk to is him. When you got a tough vote to cast, where's he? And we have many Christ-filled people in the Texas House. I would say that Texas, which I'm proud of, is probably the most Christ-centered legislature in the country. And that's why people keep moving here, 1,000 people a day. They see our values. They see it's an opportunity to come here and start a business and have a good job and live the American dream. They come here, as I like to say, by the thousands, by the millions. We've added 18 million, check that, 11 million since 2000. We've gone from 18 million to 30 million, and the projection is we're going to have another 15 million in another 20 years. And they come here, as I like to say, and you've probably heard me say it, I'll remind you, they don't move here. They arrive here, and Texas moves into them. They go to the rodeo for the first time. They get a pair of cowboy boots. They become Texas, because we all have the DNA, a little bit of Crockett and Bowie and Travis, and they pick up on that. That's why Brenda was talking about the Alamo. Love the Alamo. And by the way, and I won't say this bad word, but they weren't saying forget the Alamo. They were using that as a reference to another word. You know, if you watch a movie on an airplane, they bleep out some words with the word forget. This was a group of people who wanted to totally destroy the story of the Alamo and the fight for independence and turn it into something that it wasn't. So, you know what? I found out the Bob Bullock Museum was hosting them for a book event. I'm on the preservation board with the governor and the speaker. We oversee the Bullock Museum, and I called up the Bullock Museum and I said, you cancel that event. We're not having anyone coming in the Bullock Museum in Texas. And all the left said, oh, Dan Patrick's trying to limit speech. I'm for free speech. But don't come and say forget the Alamo in the Texas Bullock Museum. So this is a time for us to think big. Time for us to think big. And we always do, and states look to us, but bigger than ever. So I want to talk a little bit about some things we're working on in the Senate. The first, I want to show you a little slide, just give you a little background. Can we put up the clock slide? Do we have that? It'll be here any moment. Is it on those screens? Okay, I can't see it. Let me go down here so I can see it. You know, I've talked about our budget sometimes being like a clock. Hope I don't have feedback down here. So, time to talk Texas budget. I used to do this with an invisible clock behind me, and there was always an Aggie in the room that said, I can't see the clock. I said, I understand. Any Aggies here? I apologize to you for that. I was on a cruise once. It was an Aggie cruise, and there was a ventriloquist that was on the cruise, and he was telling a lot of jokes, and he was making fun of a lot of people, and he started making fun of Aggies, and I thought, he's in trouble. And after about 10 minutes, an Aggie in the back stood up and said, I want you to stop telling these Aggie jokes. This is an Aggie cruise. And the ventriloquist said, I apologize, sir. I didn't know. He said, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking about that little guy in your lap. So anyway, Aggies are still figuring that out, but I love Texas A&M. You gotta love it. So if you look at our budget, about 30%, almost midnight to 6, is what we spend on education. You can see $83 billion. These are state funds. $83 billion on public education, K through 12, $29 million on higher ed. And if they don't kick DEI out of their schools, they're going to get a lot less. Health and Human Services, $46 billion, which is mostly Medicaid. Public safety, criminal justice, and all combined, about $19 billion. And then all other articles in the clock. So the purpose of this clock is to show you, people say, well, I want more for this, I want more for that, whatever it might be. If you go past midnight, what happens? You have to either raise taxes, not going to do that, or you have to cut a program somewhere. So we look at that clock. I've always looked at that clock. We can't go past midnight. Now, we've had the great blessings in the last two sessions of having $40 billion almost in surplus last time, and $24 billion. But we have to spend that money wisely, because you can't spend one-time money on ongoing things. So, for example, the way the Constitution writes, it was a Senate bill that we passed, says we can't spend more than population times inflation. So out of that almost $40 billion surplus we had, we could only spend $12 billion of it under the law. And so I knew as Republicans we couldn't sit on 20-some million with all the issues we have in Texas we have to face and all the challenges, but we couldn't spend all the money. So how do you do that if you're constitutionally limited? We do that by constitutional amendments. So if you'll remember, you went out and voted for a lot of constitutional amendments in last November, like a $4.5 billion for retired teacher, $1 billion for their COLA, a one-time thing, $1 billion for an endowment for our parks, $5 billion to build more natural gas plants, et cetera. So we gave you the opportunity, vote thumbs up, thumbs down on how you wanted to spend that money. And that way we were able to do that legally within the Constitution. And we'll have a few more constitutional amendments this time because we have a little bit of a surplus. But we are very careful in the Senate and in the House, our budgets are pretty matched, not to spend the surplus on things we have to continue to pay for, because we're not always going to have a surplus. That's one of the things some of your public schools have said, my gosh, I've got to fire staff. I'm short of money. Well, it's because they took all that money they got during COVID and they hired people with it when it was one-time money. Instead of improving the HVAC system or building whatever they needed to build or buying supplies or whatever, they hired people, and now they didn't have the money. We fund our schools. Again, you saw $83 billion up on the clock for public schools. When you add state funds, it totals $96 billion for public schools. We've increased the teacher pay in the Texas Senate, and the House agreed, since 2019 from an average of $54,000 a year to $62,000 a year. And we're going to pass the teacher pay bill this session, probably next week or the week after. That will do two things. Right now, there's a gap of $10,000 between a teacher in rural Texas and an urban suburban teacher. So we're going to close that gap by doing this. Every 5-year teacher is going to get about a $5,000 raise, and rural teacher is going to get a $10,000 raise. So when you hear, if you hear, that the Republicans in the Texas Senate and the legislature not supporting public education, if I were giving this speech on this floor in 2015, I would be telling you that we spent $46 billion on education. And after this budget, it's $83 billion on public education. So don't buy into the lie. And of that, a lot of that was teacher pay and a lot of it was property taxes. I want to show you another slide, if I can, just to talk about school choice for just a moment. I know Governor Abbott talked about it, and thank God Dustin Burrows says we will pass it. Yeah. So, you know, I want you to have answers for your friends that say, school choice, I don't know. So I want you to look, you know, it's going to take over public education. So we have 5.1 million students in regular public schools. We have 422,000 in public charters. So all total, we have 5.5 million students in public schools. We have 478,000 in growing homeschool, 300,000 in private, and when we passed, finally, because we've already passed out of the Senate, and I like Brad Buckley's bill that he passed, very similar to the Senate bill. I was pleased with what he passed today. I haven't read it all yet, but it looks good so far. It will be $1 billion program a year for 100,000 students. So when anyone tells you that, and you hear all these radio ads and some of your members are getting hammered at home by the teacher unions, well, it's taking money away from public education. Our budget, remember the clock I had up there, this session, all funds for public schools, $96 billion and $1 billion for school choice. 5.5 million kids to 100,000. There's no way school choice is ever going to undermine public education. It's just a big lie told by the teacher unions, who famously said about 20 years ago when they were interviewed, well, don't you care about the kids? And the then Randy Weingarten, I think Randy Weingarten is the most communist, socialist person on the planet to really undermine our country. About 20 years ago, they asked whoever the Randy was at that time, they said, well, don't you care about the students? And that person said, when students start paying dues, we'll focus on them. And remember, they give 99% of their dues to Democrats. When I was talking to Elon last week, I asked him, I said, would you do me a favor? I said, would you tweet out something? You know, the president had put a social post up about, he thanked the Lieutenant Governor and the Senate, Brandon Creighton, for passing the school choice bill. You know, the biggest launch ever, $1 billion, 100,000 children. And so I said, Elon, you do own Twitter. Would you mind, would you put a post out and would you put Dustin Burrows' name in it so he knows you're paying attention? And again, so far, look, so far so good. We're working together. Of course, we're on the 24th day. I'll let you know for the full story 116 days from now, but we're starting out good, okay? Here's what Elon tweeted out. I love this. So simple. I've been giving speeches on school choice forever about the reasons why. He said, I hope Dustin Burrows passes school choice in Texas to give kids a chance. If kids only have one school option and it's bad, then they don't have a chance. That's the truth. So our school choice program, if you look at it, it's not for everybody. If you go around the nation, let me turn my phone off. If you go around the nation, an average of 3 to 4% parents take advantage of it in the states that have it. Because most schools are good, like in Texas, most of our schools are good. We have a lot of great schools, but you have some failing schools. So our school choice program focuses on kids with disabilities, people in failing schools, and then also universal for everyone with a certain bucket of the money. So we're going to get it done. I'm confident the Speaker will get it through, and we'll work out any differences in the bill, and we'll have a great school choice plan. So finally, after will be the 6th time I've passed it out of the Senate, or we passed it out of the Senate. So I'm thankful that we're finally going to get it done. It's a big deal. You know, you cannot live the American dream if you don't have a quality education. You just can't. And so if we want to be a nation that is not a nation of haves and have-nots, we've got to get everyone educated. And the real beauty of school choice is to put competition in the school system to make schools better. That's the reason when I was education chair in 2013, we passed the A through F plan, so that you knew before then your school was either achieving or underachieving or whatever they called it. You didn't know what it was. Now you know if your school's an A, a B, a C, a D, or an F. And it's amazing how many schools have become A and Bs. Nobody wants to put on their marquee a C. They won't even put up the Ds and the Fs. So we just need to make public education competitive. You know, I always think about if a kid in the inner city, where most of our failing schools are, we have some of the rural areas that aren't doing well, but mostly more inner city areas, big cities. I always think about if that kid is really great at basketball or football, some guy who's a football coach at some school is going to pull up in front of his house and get out and walk in there and recruit that kid to go to college. And I always think about the kid next door who doesn't have any athletic talent, but he's really smart and he's really good at math. And he could become a math teacher, he could become a doctor, he could become a lawyer, he could become someone really great. And no one pulls up in front of his house and recruits him. And he's stuck in a bad school. So one of the challenges we need to give to all our colleges, and we have great schools in Texas, is don't just drive up to the house with a kid who can dunk the ball or throw a football 40, 50 yards. Look for the kids who are the best and the brightest who need a chance. And that's what school choice is really about. That's what public charters are really about. That's all it's about. We're just trying to lift up people. And I have to tell you, and we have good bipartisanship in the Senate, like our bail reform bills that we passed out today and yesterday, passed 29-2. Their message was very simple. If you're charged with murder, you don't get out on bail. If you're charged with rape, you don't get out on bail. If you're charged with a sexual offense of a child, you don't get out on bail. We passed that bill in 2021, and it failed in the House. We passed that bill in 2023. It failed in the House. And as Joan Huffman said today, just in Harris County alone, 162 people have been murdered since 2021 by people who were charged with murder or serious crimes who were out on the street to commit another murder. We will not stand this session for the Democrats to kill the bail bills in the Texas House. Those bills must be passed. It's life and death. 161 families are suffering because someone who shouldn't have been out on bail committed another murder. So I know the Republicans in the House will support it. It's a constitutional amendment, so we need 12 Democrats to cross over. And I asked those Democrats, and whenever I give a speech, the word gets back everywhere somewhere. Look at your Democrat senators, because of our Democrat senators, 9 out of 11 voted unanimously, voted for these bills, the entire package. So House members, Democrats, look at the Senate Democrats, because they want to protect the lives of their citizens. And let me tell you why this is big. And we talk about Harris County. We keep records in Harris that other counties don't keep. But there are 1,657 people who have been charged with murder who are awaiting trial. And 800 are out on the street. 800 are out on the street. And you say, well, that's Harris County. No, those people don't commit their crimes just in Harris County or Dallas County or Austin or Travis County. My goodness, you got a DA in this county that won't even arrest people stealing cars. And you know who's stealing cars? The drug cartels. So when you look back at the election of Donald Trump, being soft on crime, having an open border, and supporting boys and men playing women's sports, 3 reasons they lost the election. 3 reasons. And so in Texas, we're going to protect those people. And the governor's made it an emergency item, the bail reform package, along with school choice and teacher pay. We've already passed it out, and I'm asking our Republican friends in the House to talk to your Democrat friends and tell them to, if you're going to vote against that bill, go talk to your Democrat senator who you serve with and find out why they supported the bill. Other big ideas this session. I announced early on that we needed DPRIT, Dementia Prevention and Cure. Because I don't know of another disease that impacts so many families than Alzheimer's. And 10 years ago, we created CPRIT, Cancer Prevention and Cure. And we have put $300 million every year in CPRIT, and we have had so many breakthroughs with cancer treatment And people today are living because of what Texas did. Because when you put $3 billion into a plan, a research plan over 10 years, you attract the best researchers in the country, because we don't give the grants to anyone if they're not here in Texas. So we're going to do that with dementia. We'll pass that bill. I'm sure the Speaker supports it, because we need to do the same thing for dementia. If you know anyone with Alzheimer's, and I hope you do not, but it's so prevalent, it's a disease that kills the family. Because once a person gets Alzheimer's, the whole family life stops as well. So that's a big idea that we're looking at. Charles Perry is here. Big idea. We've got to address the water problem. We've got to find a way to provide the water for those 15 million more people who are coming and the 30 million people who are here. And one of the things that we don't do in water that we do in roads, for example, when Greg Abbott and I became governor and lieutenant governor in 2015, our budget for roads was $23 billion. Today it's about $33 billion. And one of the things we did, we put a steady stream of money every year into a road fund, because TxDOT can't depend every session how much they're going to have. They needed a steady stream of money. So you look out, they need a 10-year plan to build roads. Well, for water, we don't have that. We put $2.5 billion in the budget for infrastructure for water. The House did too. I thank Greg Bonin and the Speaker for doing that. But we need a steady stream of money, and we're working on a way to find that, because we need to invest money every year into building water projects, or we're going to be way behind. The grid, a big idea. We have about 85,000 megawatts of power, and of those 85 megawatts of power, only about 60,000 is natural gas or nuclear or coal, very small nuclear, and that's a great future. We're looking at investments in nuclear. That's the future, especially small units, small nuclear units. But if we have 85,000 megawatts of power and we only have 60,000 megawatts of natural gas, when the wind doesn't blow and the sun's not out, we don't have enough. It's real simple. In fact, the most dangerous time, we can survive on a hot day, turn the thermostat up a few degrees. But you can't survive a cold winter's night if you don't have heat. We saw that in Winter Storm Uri. 200 people died. So we need to continue to make investments in dispatchable. That's nuclear, coal, and mostly natural gas. We have all the natural gas in the world. In fact, I was talking to an oil man, and a bunch of oil men are here today, I know. They're actually paying people to take natural gas now. It's gone from about $17 to now they're paying people 20 cents to take it per unit. So we have plenty of natural gas. And so we've made a $5 billion investment last session to build more natural gas plants, and we're doing it again this session. So that's a $10 billion investment just in that. So big ideas. Let's take on Alzheimer's. Let's put a water plan in place that's going to give us the water we need, because we're already running short. Let's build a grid that can handle data centers and AI and crypto mining, because we should be the #1 leader in all of that technology. We should be the leader in all of that. But they have to have the power. And we've told them, you can come to Texas, but you have to have a power plan. So the future of Texas is incredible. And right now we have this opportunity to take advantage of what Donald Trump is going to do in the next 4 years for America. And we want to lead on that. The border, easy peasy. I said on Laura Ingram's show, I was on last night, but I said a few weeks ago before the election, I said on day one the border will be shut if Donald Trump wins the election. Between Texas and Donald Trump, between Greg Abbott, myself, and the legislature, it'll be shut. We've gone from about 5,000 people crossing a day to a few hundred crossing a day. It's amazing the difference an election makes. We still have a long way to go, a lot of people to deport, a lot of criminals to get out, but we're going to get them out. Property taxes. I mentioned it briefly. We just passed our bill for $140,000 in property taxes. This number is going to floor you. Since 2017, the Texas legislature and the Senate has led on these bills. We have put $51 billion into property tax relief. $51 billion. That's $51 billion that we have to do every session. And where do we put it? We put it in compression. We put it in homestead exemption. And if we had not done that, your property taxes really would be sky high. And they're still high. And I like the video that TPPF and Greg put out on looking at your local governments. You know, we passed last session, that $18 billion tax cut gave every person about a $1,400 cut in their school taxes, and if you're a senior, about $1,500. But a lot of counties raised their own taxes $200 or $300, so it took away from that. But we have, as the legislature, and appraisals don't matter anymore. We've kind of talked about that last session because we broke that away. Your appraisal can go up. You want your house to be more valuable than it was when you bought it. But we limited spending by local governments to 3.5% and school districts to 2.5%. So as the values goes up, they have to lower their tax rate. So if you'll look at your tax bill in November, don't worry about the appraisal bill in the spring. Look at your tax bill in November. Look back at the last 4 or 5 years. You'll see today, from what you were paying on your M&O school rate, which is the biggest part of your tax bill, it's down 41%. And after this session, it'll be down about 48%. So we continue to deliver at the state level, but we have got. And a lot of these local elected officials are Republicans, by the way. So we've got to put a harness, as TPPF video says, on all those local taxes that just keep going up and up and up, eating away at some of the money that we're giving back. So big time for big ideas. I'm so excited about this session. If we can do everything I just talked about, and I think we will, and so much more, there's so many other important things, we will continue to be the reason you keep showing up. Will be the reason people from America keep showing up at our doorstep, because this is the best place on planet Earth to be. This is where you can dream. This is where you can, if we get these bail bond bills passed, you can feel you live in safety. This is a place that you can get a quality education. And if you're not happy with your school, you'll have options. This is a place where the lights will come on when you hit the switch. This is a place where the water will run when you turn the spigot. This is a place that we have been blessed with by God. You know, on the 7th day, just before he rested, he said, I got one more thing I've got to do. What do I do with all this oil and gas? And since he knows everything that's going to happen, and you know, someone, Matt Shaheen yesterday, if you all know Matt, he helping with a prayer, and he says, you know, the Bible says God knows every hair on your head. Of course, he's bald. But even if you are follically challenged, just remember you still have skin in the game. But since God knows everything that was going to happen, he said, I know I can trust all that oil and gas with the good people of Texas to do the right thing, to lead the nation. The world needs a strong America. They have a strong president. And America needs a strong Texas. And because you give us the wind under our wings to fight for all of the things that you care about every day, we're a strong Texas. So thank you for being a part of TPPF. It's so important, your contributions, your support of the organization, because we rely on them for white papers, for research, and just to be there with us. So you all are the patriots. You all are the heroes. Thank you. I love being Lieutenant Governor. I'm running in 2026 again. Thank you very much. God bless everybody. Thank you. Thank you.